Welcome to the Coffee Chronicles, the podcast series in which Deloitte explores the trends, innovations, and personalities of the coffee industry. I'm Daniel Laude, and this is the second part of my conversation with Thermoplan CEO Adrian Steiner. In the first part, we talked about the beginning days of Thermoplan, when Adrian joined the company, later became CEO, and how Thermoplan became the exclusive provider of coffee machines for Starbucks in all their cafes worldwide. So if you have not listened to this, I recommend that you start with that part. And now in the second part, we'll talk about the impact of the current US tariffs on Thermoplan's business, and also a new opportunity that Thermoplan is seizing with another beverage, not coffee, and in another market, Far East. And if this collaboration, if this partnership goes well, probably all around the globe. Enjoy our conversation. Let's talk tariffs. We have the 39% since the beginning of August. Now, 39% on Swiss products, imports to the US. But we knew it was coming. There was Liberation Day in the first days of April. Then the tariffs were paused at that moment, I think for 3 months originally. So the US and other governments could negotiate. And then the tariffs, I think, that actually came shocked many or were higher than expected. Can you give me a sense, how did you prepare, like internally, as you said, in your Thermoplan family or with your partners in the US, especially Starbucks? How did you prepare in the last couple of months before actually the 39% hit?
That's a very good question. And yes, of course, we all knew, but did we also believe it, that it will come? That's a good question. And April 2nd, the Rose Garden with the table of the tariffs. At that time, it was 31%. It was the first shock. Unbelievable. I was actually traveling to the US. We have our quarterly key supplier meeting. It was at that time planned to be, or it was in Dallas, in Texas. And this was good due to the fact that I had the other day, it was then on Thursday, Starbucks and all other key suppliers from Starbucks. It was 6-7 key suppliers in the same room, because it was a lot of suppliers from Canada and from Mexico and also producers from the US in the food and equipment industry. And this was helpful to prepare and also understand what are the opportunities. So for example, when I was talking to the CEO of Middleby, one of the equipment manufacturers, oven manufacturers of Starbucks, he said, that's also a big problem for me, because I'm sourcing more than 40% of the components outside of the US, where I also have the tariffs on, and so on and so on. And it was like sharing the challenge and creating together opportunities. Like at that time, it was clear transfer pricing. This was something which we were looking for. It was the first time I have heard about at this meeting, and good or bad, but crises are helping a lot to learn. And this was the first reaction. So to have at least a rough overview where we have opportunities, but we all recognized if this stays like that, we all have huge problems. And this was then the clear understanding of our customer, and this was Starbucks. Coming back to your question, but Brazil has 50%. So Starbucks is using more than half of their coffee is coming from Brazil.
The beans, yeah.
Yeah, the beans. And having 50% import tariffs, it's such a nightmare for our customer. Of course, having on the coffee equipment, having on all these different sources combined. So the biggest impact by far is for the US-based companies by all these tariff discussions. So it is clear Starbucks cannot absorb all these additional costs. That was something we already learned, not from day one, it was then April the 3rd, but we have to share these costs. We have to find solutions, but it will hurt. it will hurt Starbucks and it will hurt Thermoplan or all the suppliers. But that's also kind an important part of the partnership, also to absorb costs together. So we always knew from beginning of these tariff discussions, we will end up with a cost split. Of course, then from 31, it took only a couple of days, and then it went down to 10%. But as I said, temporarily for these 3 months. And then it was the project was for us important to explore and to learn what would it mean to transfer a production away from Switzerland. So we started. So the inner circle, of course, it's Switzerland, but then what is in Italy, what is in Germany, what is in the UK? It's clear from the US government we are forced or asked. It doesn't matter. Actually, it matters, but to start to produce reindustrialization in the US. So what would it mean to start producing our coffee equipment in the US? And it was this exploration phase. It took almost 2 months. So having conversations with other companies, like with Middleby or with other manufacturers in the US, in Europe, in Italy, in Germany. But to be honest, we did not have this sense of urgency as we learned afterwards, because now we have 39%. We were not lazy, but a little bit too laid back, because we were hoping too much that it will stay 10 or even less percent. It was also a very positive communication from our Bundesrat and so on and so on. And maybe we were just too, not, it is not naive. It was just maybe too optimistic on this point. But then it was then the August 1st to our national holiday. It was then the communication, Switzerland 39%. The worst conditions from whole Europe. It was a couple days before, it was 15% for the EU, 10% for the UK. This was a shock. I never expected 39%. I never expected to have the worst condition in Europe. I never expected to have worse condition than the European Union. It's very stressful for us because we all know export industry for Switzerland with the strong Swiss franc is always a challenge. So we have had invested a lot in automatization, in be more efficient, very much in innovation to have solutions for our customers, convince them to pay a little bit extra on short term, but over the lifetime of the equipment, it will come multiple times. That's our business model. And having now this strong Swiss franc and the 39%, this puts us out of business. And even more combined with our customer base. So most of our customers, their headquarter is in the US. So McDonald's, Tim Hortons, Starbucks, and Coca-Cola, many others. So if we lose the access to the hometown of these customers, then you lose the access to the global business. And in our industry, a little bit focused on chain businesses, there are not so many European global acting chain businesses or Asian-based. So they are in the US. So this was when you have business models and when you do a calculation on what is the worst case. The worst case is exactly what happens now. 39% with a strong currency, you are not anymore competitive. And now here we are.
So you said this situation was very hurtful. You're incurring extra cost that you did not forecast, at least not in this dimension. Can you give me a number? What are we talking about here if you say it puts you out of business?
Yeah, of course, we still deliver equipment and even more spare parts to the US. And the spare parts, another story, by having even 50% on steel and 50% on aluminium and 50% on copper. And most of our spare parts are containing a lot of these metals. So combining the equipment and the spare parts business for all customers in the US, we have, depending of course on the order volume, on average a couple 100,000 Swiss francs per week we are losing, and that's a lot of money. So it means for us, with this cost split of the tariffs, we don't earn any money on the US business, which is okay. So I think so Dominic and myself, we are the owner of the company, and for us, it was clear we can do this. A little bit midterm thinking, we can handle it. So we can say, okay, good. We give this margin, we give this, we pay this per week. But then the question is how long? So when I do this calculation with the orders and the loss of money, this couple 100,000 a week, then we talk maybe summer 26. And now it's our challenge. So all the decisions you make with your team are not good decisions, because we are successful. At the end, it's all about quality. So quality of the income and the reliability. It's all about that. And we can ensure this on our production facility here in Switzerland, because we know how to engineer, we know how to assemble, we know the supply chain. So 82% of the components we source here in Switzerland. To transfer this to another place, it's a huge risk. So you have much more work, you earn much less money. And the biggest problem is, how can we ensure the quality, the income quality and the reliability? The most important point why our customers are working with Thermoplan. For example, if I just go to let's say, coffee equipment manufacturers to Italy. Of course, they have the infrastructure, they have the employees, but then I lose my soul. So why should they buy an equipment actually designed from a Swiss company but produced in Italy? I can then, of course, buy directly in Italy in coffee machines. So I think that's something we are really struggling, because we have on one side the bleeding of cash per week, but we don't want to lose the soul and from the customer proposition and the values on the quality we have to endure. So therefore, we decided, let's have a look on the assembling place in Germany by our daughter company in Hockenheim. The plan is now to use the same supply chain as we have today, send the components to Weggis, where we are here, do the module assembling here and the testing of the modules, and ship the modules to Germany. And in Germany, they produce the chassis with the wire harness, with the tubes, whatever you need for building a coffee machine. Insert the modules with our know-how and competence and quality aspects. But then, of course, do the software download, the testing and final covering of the machine and assembling and packaging of the machine and the shipment. So we have the European Union. You have to have a value of about 30% locally, which we can do. But the question is then, does the US customs accept this? Because they are not on the value, they are technology-based on the know-how. And, for example, they have a lot of experience with, for example, Chinese electric car manufacturers who try to pre-assemble components, sending to Mexico and do the final assembling in Mexico and then import it to the US, even if the company is owned by a Chinese company. We don't accept this. So that's also, we have learned a lot about that due to the advantage that Starbucks, as an importer, they are very, very close to the US customs. So Starbucks has been here in Weggis with the experts on their import teams. And we found now a way how to include the US custom into this project made in Germany. And that's very important. So we already received last week a list of questions which they have had to our concept. So we have to give them the feedbacks actually this week. And this will go back and forward. And they told us within the next 30 days, so mid to the end of October, we should have a feedback from the US customs. Do they accept this or not, that Thermoplan coffee equipment will be made in Germany? to your point, so that's the plan we are working now on. First, we need the approval of the U.S. customs. So that's the first milestone. If we receive this, we do a little bit investments on infrastructure and hiring of people there. For the first stage, we can also send people from employees from Thermoplan, Switzerland to Germany to do the work there. They are willing to do this. And then the plan is so January, February to produce the first made in European Union equipment to be delivered directly to the US. To the point, so what happens from today until January or even later, it's so hard to say. You don't know if the tariffs go down in Switzerland, if the tariffs go up in the EU. There are so many question marks.
What's your opinion? What do you see as the most likely outcome if we look into, let's say, 2026?
Oh, of course, I'm not as enthusiastic as I have been 2 months ago, because the trading difference of this 40 billion is huge between Switzerland and the US. And how to reduce this and what can we give to the US to find a deal? This question is so tough because we are with a population of 9 million compared to 400 million to the US. It's almost impossible to find a trading deal. But on the other side, it's a clear saying from the Trump administration, yeah, you are rich because of the US. If this is right or wrong, it doesn't matter because it's what they believe. So you have to answer this point. There is an opportunity to bring more investments from Switzerland to the US. So far, Switzerland is a huge investor in USA. I think it's now also our opportunity, but also a little bit obligation from the industry to show what is our plan for the future on investment to the US. So is it the tech industry or the med tech industry or pharma or whatever, to show what do we bring to the US in a mid or long term. On the other side, there has to be some cash deals done. We know how much the EU, European Union, or now Japan has offered to the Trump administration. So therefore, to your question, so early 2026, I really hope and believe. So we have to reduce this 39%, and there is an opportunity to reduce this. What do you think? What will be the tariffs in 26 early?
I don't really have a crystal ball. I wish I had one.
Yes.
Very, very tough question. Let's jump to another country, another market, and actually another beverage.
Yeah.
It's, hopefully a new market of yours, or you started to supply a Chinese tea house, I think called Chagee.
Chagee, exactly. Yeah, perfect.
Already with the first 200 machines, not coffee machines, tea machines, and they're expanding globally. So we're looking at a long-term, another partnership. Can you tell this story? How did this come and where are we going here?
Yeah, I would just step back to the conversation when we started. So Dominic was always looking, what is the next? What's next? And the question we have right now, what is the next cappuccino? What is the next beverage? Who will be changing the industries and the customer drinking behavior for a longer time? And we all know that bubble tea or now matcha tea is very popular. Chagee, Jay, the founder, he's just 30 years old. So his birthday was 2 months ago. So he's very young. So he started with 25 years and already opened 6,500 tea shops in China. He explains tea to me like tea is very, very smart. Coffee can only energize yourself. Tea can calm down, can energize, but can have also an impact on your health. So therefore, tea is something which is, of course, interesting, hot and cold, and mixed with fruit juice, mixed with milk or non-dairy products. It's it's very interesting, hot and cold. And we have installed one equipment in our cafeteria. And you see the customer behavior already changing. So in the afternoon, people, also Thermoplan employees, they enjoy a lot of a cup of tea because it's also something different and the taste is very, very nice. For example, this year, 25, Chagee is opening 10 new tea stores only in the US, and they just launched it in May. So I think that's a clear sign. And the tea shops, I have been in Los Angeles in July and visiting this tea, it's so crowded. So it's, I think, to have something new, it's about time. And what's next means what are the global trends, and we understand also it's health and convenience and Jay, the founder of Chagee, he is a big fan of Starbucks. I think that's the long story short, but that's the reason why he was contacting myself, and he said Starbucks is his number one company idol because they brought their coffee culture to Asia. And now he thinks it's time to bring the Chinese tea culture to the West and go global, go international. And this is only possible, the same as Starbucks told us at the exhibition in EGO, by automatization. You only can ensure the processes by automatization so that the teacup has always the same taste around the world. And that's the reason why he was contacting Thermoplan and asking, can you help us? Can you help us to brew fresh tea? So it's right now the version we have is with 2 different blends. And we are working now on a new design, a new development on 5 different tea leaves. And you can imagine coffee is quite easy to prepare because the coffee bean, the sizes are very regular. You put it into the bean hopper, you grind it, you brew it, you enjoy it. For the tea leaves, you have small leaves, you have big leaves, you have rolled, you have even roasted tea leaves and so on. And it means much more on preparation because at the end, the goal is to prepare this cup of beverage in 40 seconds. And extracting a cup of tea in 40 seconds is only possible when you pre-grind these leaves on 4 different steps, then open the cells. So with new technologies, with steam and ultrasonic, and then brew it with the right temperature, with the right pressure, so that you get a very nice concentrated, high intense cup of tea in these 40 seconds. And I think that's exactly a challenge we really love. We already have 5 new patents on this tea extraction. Of course, COVID was with the ventilators was a special case, but to be honest, a year ago, my tea consumption is very low. I drink maybe iced tea, or when I feel not so well, I take a cup of tea. But having an organization like Thermoplan who is open-minded, and when you bring an idea into it and when you explain it, you can create with the know-how, with the technologies we have, also the network in Switzerland, new solutions to the customers. And this is one more advantage why we design and work and produce here in Switzerland. We have such a wonderful network with ETH, with the universities, with all the open InnoSwiss, with the networks, collaboration with other food industries. Maybe we will see in 1 or 2 years that we produce a big part of our equipment and business in the tea industry, which is completely new, but not so far away from the core competences we have. And I think that's also important.
But I assume that before that, you had no machines that were specific to tea, right?
Not at all, no.
Start? How did you do the first prototype? What was your starting point there?
We have a daughter company in Shanghai. So since 2001, we have the business in China. I'm regularly every 3-4 times a year, I'm in China. there, I think the tea culture is not new for us, especially not for our daughter company in China. But sometimes there's always the starting point. So where is the need? And with this Chagee, with this automatization, this was really the enabler to be open-minded and creating solutions. I think that was the good thing, but you don't know in which direction it will go, because there is also a lot of challenges also for food safety, for hygiene reasons. On the coffee industry, I have a clear idea what a cup of coffee should taste like. But if I taste a white tea, a green tea, oolong tea, jasmine tea, I don't have this sensority. I don't have this experience. I'm almost. It feels like blind. I enjoy it. I like it, but I have no clue. Not no clue, but a very limited know-how. This you can only do with partners. So collaboration on the tea equipment without Chagee, without our daughter company in Shanghai, it would be absolutely not possible. And I think we live in such a wonderful time, because on technology with sensorics, but also with AI and other technologies, it feels like everything is possible. You just have to find the right need and the right network who enables it. There we are in a very good position. And I think it's also part of the culture to be open to share, open to create new opportunities with the right people you trust.
Then I hope that this new partnership will be so successful that actually the first beverage of the day that you have, Adrian, or at least the second one after the glass of water to come full circle to the beginning of this conversation, will be some kind of tea. Thank you very much for
Thank you
today.
Yeah, it was also for me, of course, it was a lot of talking from my side, but it's such a wonderful story about Thermoplan and so much passion and so great people behind. So it's a privilege to talk about our company, and thank you for this opportunity.
I can hear that, the passion, and from the beginning, not the first day of Thermoplan, but the very beginning days, we looked all the way into the future.
Yes.
For which I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Personally.
Thank you.
For the business.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. This episode of the Coffee Chronicles is part of the Food Economy podcast series, produced by Deloitte Switzerland. In the food economy, we explore market trends and the future of food with expert insights. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe and leave a review. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for our next episode, and see you next time.